Hi everyone, just a quick message to say apologies for the slightly shorter episode this week. We've had a few technical difficulties this week, which we've put down to recording from just a hint over 10,000 miles away from each other, which has meant that we also can't use camera this week. So we're back to the traditional format, so apologies for that. However, I just wanted to take this chance to say this is your last few days to get your submissions in for your Hall of Fame plays. We're going to stop accepting submissions on Tuesday, the 17th of March, because we'll be discussing them on the show next week. And then the following week, we'll be giving you our definitive lowdown review of the Americas expansion. So stick around for those. Apologies this week for being just audio only. Hope you enjoy the traditional format. We'll be back to our usual next week, we hope. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Full Tug, the Wingspan podcast with me, Aidan.
And me, Adam, and we are going to do something slightly different this week. We are just going to get straight on with some content. No rambling this week. And the reason we're doing that is because we get a lot of emails about Adam and Aidan, please can you give us some tips for beginners? And I mean, there are an absolute myriad of amazing tips for beginners websites out there, aren't there?
Yeah. Like, there's a lot of resources out there.
Wingsplain is the main one, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we've had quite a few people ask us, and a couple of times we've said no, but I think this time we're going to say yes, aren't we? So we're going to spend our first section of the show today just talking specifically about the base game, and specifically what would be our tips to ourselves if we were to learn the game again now? And it's not just get the Chwan Raven and put it in the grasslands and maybe call it the grasslands instead of the fire, and you'd save yourself a lot of jip. And so we hope that this could be a repository maybe for people who are new to the game, just a little 10-minute, 15-minute chit-chat about our 7 tips for success for the base game. How does that sound, Aidan?
Yeah, I think an important disclaimer is that we in no way claim to be experts on the base game or even experts on Wingspan. Those of you who listen regularly will know we often say some very silly things about the game. But
do you not think you're an expert at Wingspan?
I don't know.
Do you not?
It depends what you define as an expert, I suppose.
Yeah, mate, you're Black Diamond. You are. Yeah. You're an expert. You're an expert at Wingspan.
But yeah, we've come up with this list as a set of things that kind of, I suppose, we remember from playing the base game are important things to maybe bear in mind. But it's definitely not exhaustive. There's almost certainly going to be some tips we miss out here that are also useful. And there may be some tips that, some people at home don't entirely agree with, but we think they're pretty fair, don't we?
So straight off the bat, probably my most important tip is this is an engine building game, not an engine running game. And so what do I mean when I say that? When I say engine, I mean the number of brown powers you have in a row in one habitat. So if you've got 5 brown powers in a row in your wetlands, and they're all doing something and getting you points, that is a engine or a chain. We use those words interchangeably. And now it's all well and good building the perfect 5-card chain, which then only gets completed by the end or the middle or the start of the 4th round, means you're only going to get a few activations of it by the end. And so this is actually an engine building game. You need to be accumulating points, meanwhile you're building the engine. So it's no good collecting a load of fish early on for the engine to work at the end. You're trying to get birds that will get you points and stuff, rather than just trying to make that perfect chain, which only works if you've got the 5th bird in the end. And I think that's something that maybe I fell foul of to begin. I would see a bird that would go really, really well in, say, the 4th slot of my chain, because it would then pair well with a 3rd slot bird. And actually you spend so much time trying to get that chain out that you've wasted all your time and the game's gone.
Yeah, and I think particularly with the base game where resources are definitely harder to come by, it's really important to be making chains or using powers which will get you resources early on So, making sure you're playing brown powers that are getting you adequate food or getting you adequate card draw, so that you have the resources to start building those engines further and getting yourself stuff as you go. I think it's also important to note that for people who are new to the game, it's really important to recognize the different types of powers that there are. And remember, when we talk about chain building, we're really referring to brown powers that you put in a row, as Adam says, to kind of create, when you activate one of the habitats, so be that the forest, the grasslands, or the wetlands, then you activate all the brown powers in that row, and you're getting lots and lots of different power activations, whether that be resources or points in one row. The pink and white powers are kind of slightly different and don't really contribute to the chains, but are also very valuable cards, and you should think about how you use those too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if we move on to our second point,
I think a really important goal when you start a base game is to get 2 birds in the trees or get 2 birds in the forest.
ASAP.
So the reason this is important is kind of what we just mentioned. So resources are quite hard to come by. You'll notice that birds will either require 1, 2, or 3 foods, sometimes none, but mostly 1, 2, or 3 foods. And actually, unless you start playing birds in your forest that get you food quite early on, then you're going to quickly run out of food and find you're really struggling to play birds and build those engines that we talked about. Now, with the base game, what you'll realize if you look at the board is that until you play 2 birds in the forest column, you won't get up to that 2 food, 2 dice symbol to get 2 food at once, plus then the brown power activations for the birds that you've played. So it's once you get to that point, it's kind of a tipping point to being kind of food poor to suddenly quite food rich, particularly if you've played 2 brown powers that get you foods.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more with that one. A wise man once said to me, well, not said to me, we'll move on to the next rule, actually. How about that? Our next tip. Wise man once said, play the cards you have, not the cards you want. And now I think in the base game, this mantra holds out very, very true. And that is a mantra that I still live by today. You should not be digging for the entire game for the perfect card, and you should be actually most of the time accepting a card that will come up if it slightly works for your game. If it's not the perfect card, then you can't carry on looking for that perfect card because you don't have time in the game. This is about efficiency, this game. And so I always think play the cards you have, not the cards you want.
Yeah, no, totally. I very, very much enjoyed your correction for Wise Man once saying that, because you wanted to make sure it referred to yourself. Very subtle indeed.
I'll cut that bit out.
No, I totally agree. I think relating to that is you're nail on the head with efficiency. You've got to be efficient. So particularly when you're thinking about your starting hand, and I think this is a really difficult thing if you're new to the game, is when you look at your 5 opening cards, you think, how do I know what to keep? I don't know what's good or not good.
Yeah.
Just try and think about what your strategy is. You know how much food you're keeping for how many cards. You know what their food cost is going to be. So try and think about how many cards do I need to keep to ensure I have enough food to play my first few goes and get those birds down that you want. It's all very well having 5 great cards, lots with like 3 food cost, ones that you think are classically powerful, or you might have seen someone use to really good effect recently. But if you keep all 5 of those, you can't play a single one of them. So you need to think strategically, and it's definitely better to discard a good card at the start, a kind of classically good card, in order to make sure you play other cards early rather than hold on to them and just try and get foods, which isn't going to happen.
Yeah, that is so true. I think maybe for point number 5, Aidan, rule number 5, this is your phrase. This is your what you say almost every time I see you. I don't want to steal it from your mouth, but something that Aidan talks about quite a lot.
No, fair enough. Out of habitat resources. Yeah. So this is what we mean when we say out of habitat resources is a habitat has a kind of resource that's associated with it. So in the forest, it's food. In the grasslands, it's eggs, and in the wetlands, it's cards. And so what we're saying when we're saying out of habitat resources is that when you activate a forest chain, for example, you get you have brown powers in that forest chain that are something other than food, so eggs or cards. So a good example of a card that does this is a favourite of the show, and certainly of Adam's, is the Chipping Sparrow. So this is a card that can
Chipping Sparrow.
Honourable mention. So this is a card that can live in either the forest or the grasslands, but when it's played in the forest, and its brown power is lay an egg on any bird. So if you play it in the forest, then when you activate that forest chain, you'll be getting food, because the forest chain always gives you food from the bird feeder. And then when you move on to that card, you'll also be getting an egg. Now, the reason this is useful is because you'll be able to get both food and eggs in using one of your cubes, rather than having to use one cube for the forest activation and then a second cube for the grasslands activation to get yourself both those resources, because you need both. You need both to play the game. Is that fair?
Yeah, very fair. I mean, for the new listener, Chipping Sparrow is in the top 10 birds in the game, and the base game birds. That's proven by stats. So yeah, it just goes to prove the point of out of habitat resources, because your other top ones in that base game are things like the killdeer and Franklin's Gull, which get you cards in the grasslands, and the Chihuahuan and raven and
Chihuahuan raven and the common raven.
Common raven, that's it. Thank you. Which get you resources in the grasslands. So yeah, that's an excellent point. Moving on to, so how about we recap the top 5? So number 1, it's an engine building game, not an engine spinning game. Number 2, get your 2 birds in the trees as early as possible. Number 3, play the cards you have, not the cards you want. Number 4, at the start of the game, you want birds that give you stuff. There's no point keeping that big, really high point bird, which only gets you points. It doesn't give you things. Number 5, out of habitat resources. Number 6, one we haven't covered yet. It's really important to recognise the power of tucking. And so tucking in this game is often symbolised by a little flocking symbol. It's got like a little bird symbol next to the token. And what tucking allows you to do, it effectively allows you to recycle your hand. So if you've got rubbish cards in your hand, you can turn them into points, or you can turn them into other cards. So really good cards would be cards like the House Finch, which allow you to tuck a card, to draw a card. And what that does is that, let's say you've got a card in your hand that doesn't suit your game, or is too expensive, or is not worth anything. Tuck that card under the House Finch, and then you can either draw randomly from the deck, or you can draw any of the 3 face up in the tray. So what that means is that if there's a bird in the tray that you quite like, you don't have to spend a go drawing cards to get that bird. You could actually spend a go either getting eggs or getting food, because the House Finch can live anywhere, to get the card that you wanted. And so tucking really allows you just to manipulate your game subtly, and especially in the base game, tucking birds which live in the grasslands are particularly powerful.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true, and that comes back to the out of habitat resources point from earlier as well. Is and it's kind of it's a twofold win really, because on one hand you're gaining cards in the grasslands or in the forest, but you're also gaining points, remember. So you're not just getting rid of a card that you don't want and you are never going to play, but you're getting a point for it every time you activate it, and you're drawing another card. So it's it's a double whammy, and it's definitely a very good bit of advice there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then rule number 7, Aidan, our final tip for success.
Absolutely. So this is relation to the end of round goals. Now, I think I would say if you're a really new beginner to the game, try not to hyperfixate on end of round goals.
That's such a good point.
They're often distracting, and they can lead you to do plays that are actually really not very beneficial for you for the long term in the game, but can be a short-term win in terms of winning an end of round goal from someone else. That being said, I think that they do give you a good kind of a good target for direction. So if there's a particular nest type that you need to lay eggs on for an end of round goal, then making sure you have that nest type is probably not the worst strategy in the world, and it might help you make decisions at the start of the game. But point number 7 is, if there are higher player number games, so 4 or 5 player games, I'd probably make that point even more significant. Ultimately, you're now competing with 4 or 5 people for those end of round goals. So the chances that someone will pip you, even if you spend ages trying to target an end of round goal, are quite high. Conversely, in a lower number player game, so for example, if you're just playing yourself and one other person, then you're only competing with one person. And what that means is you've got a much better chance of winning them if you kind of start targeting them. And it also means it's a kind of a direct shootout. So if you win all 4 of those and your opponent comes second in all 4 of those, that's quite a big point swing at the end of the game.
Yeah.
And it is significant. So maybe pay them a little bit more attention in a 2-player game. But I would just say, don't worry too much about them. They can definitely become a distraction.
Yeah, that is such a good point. It can be a distracting game to begin when you're just learning, can't it? So yeah, that is such a good point. With that concludes the full tuck survival guide for succeeding in the base game. How about that then? And I hope listeners, you can go and use this little 10-minute segment wherever you want, just for a bit of revision.
I think it's also worth saying, if you are new to the game and you're kind of maybe you've stumbled across this as you're trying to search for some tips and trying to improve how you play, something you might be asking is, well, what are the best birds in the game? What should I be looking out for to try and make sure that I'm winning if I'm getting these sorts of birds? And I think that the genuine answer to that is, it depends on your game. Lots of birds work well in different types of games. And I think we've all won games or seen winning boards with birds that you might not classically associate as being great birds of the game. You will probably come across a lot of stuff that says that the ravens, the killdeer and Franklin's gull are the best birds in the game, in the base game. And that is true to a degree in that if you have a combination in the grasslands of a raven and one of the killdeer or Franklin's gull, then that as we talked about with chain building, that will get you eggs, food and cards all in one activation. So lots of out of habitat resources. That being said, it's a difficult combination to build up. And as Adam said earlier, sometimes if you're really going for that, it can take a few goes to get them both down and in the grasslands at the same time. So just bear it in mind. There are lots of good cards in the game. They're not the only ways to win. And if you happen to get them and it happens to work in a combination, then great. You're likely to have a good game. But there are lots of other ways to do it as well. So don't hyperfixate on those.
Fantastic. There we go. So with that all wrapped up, Aidan, should we move on to our usual?
Yeah. Let's take a quick break.
Yeah, go on. We'll take a quick break. If you enjoyed that, listen on, because hopefully the rest might be useful for you as well. So quick break and back in a minute. Okay, welcome back to Full Tuck, the Wingspan podcast with me, Adam.
And me, Aidan. So we're going to get back on with our kind of usual pod fodder after our slight diversion from the usual slight diversion from the usual format with us going into kind of the base game tips, which hopefully you enjoyed, or if you feel you are yourself already an expert, then you skipped and we're back to the usual stuff for you this week.
Yeah, to be fair, and if you feel like you're an expert, then clearly you've got more of a right to be on the show than Aidan does, because when he thinks he's not an expert in the game.
Well, I don't know.
I think you're the most expert in the game I know. You know everything about all the birds. But thanks for all your feedback this week. We've had a really nice outpouring of support for our Predator Powers Revisited section last week. Everyone seemed to really value that one. So if you missed it, I would go back and listen to that. But we got a lot of emails in this week. And so from people saying, well, you mentioned about these Predator Powers, these base game Predator Powers being not particularly useful. Would you ever consider updating them or accepting an updated pack? And so if I just read out emails from Lisa, an email from Joe, if I can just read out a bit of what Joe said. Joe's written, the game has evolved, and wonderfully so, because it shows just how versatile these cards and their powers can be, and especially how frequently and characteristically they mirror their real-life inspirations. And what the two of them are getting at in their emails is saying that, yeah, the initial powers really matched the initial bird, but they're outdated now. And so what would you say, Aidan, if a rework pack came out of some of the birds? Now, I'm not going to say the fated name of the hawk that we don't really that we don't talk about. What would you think to that?
No, I can completely see the basis of this, and I suppose ultimately as well, it's maybe easier to appreciate for our fans who are in America. That, a lot of these birds that were in the base game when they first came out are going to be birds that you're used to seeing, maybe in your backyard or when you're out and about. And so to almost see that their powers have become superseded by more powerful bird powers in more recent expansions, I can understand that you want them reworked. And there's, I think we were linked a Reddit post by Joe, weren't we, which goes through some reworkings of some of the kind of original game Predator powers and does so in a really cool way. And not just Predator powers, actually, sorry, there's lots of powers in there that is reworked. And it's really kind of upgraded them or made them much more powerful, and maybe cards that you'd be much more likely to play now. And there's some really interesting powers in there. There's some really strong powers in there. Like there's some birds there that I would definitely be playing now.
Yeah, so this is user underscore BFSSER Buffer.
Yeah.
after my JK Irfan faux pas.
Maybe we'll just spell them out
who
these
knows
days.
how you pronounce things. So examples, things like the common merganser, which is now a when activated power, cache up to 2 fish from the bird feeder on this supply. You may reset the bird feeder first. To tell you what the common merganser is currently, it's a roll all dice not in the bird feeder, and if any are fish, cache 1. So it's just slightly upgrading their powers. I to be honest, my thoughts are always about balance in the game. Is the game balanced? You need good birds, you need bad birds, don't you? And yes, the game is inherently inflationary over time, and these birds are becoming bad birds. Maybe I'm just a traditionalist. I would prefer to keep the old ones. I don't know what your opinion would be,
I'm actually
mate.
inclined to agree. I think that I can.
We agree.
I can.
Oh,
Yeah, unbelievable. I can see. I can certainly see where people are coming from, and it's quite good fun to think about how these bird powers might be reworked and upgraded and start to maybe resemble some of the newer bird powers that have been released in expansions. But ultimately, the game has gone through many years of being rethought through and expansions. But what that doesn't mean is that the base game was necessarily a bad game or they're bad powers. It just means the game's changed a bit. I actually quite like that quite a lot of the old powers came up. I was just playing a game last night with my partner Ellie, and we started playing with America's expansions, which we'll talk about in later weeks. But we're still playing base game cards. You're still playing cards that are in the base game, and it just shows you like some of the base game cards are still some of the most powerful cards. Like a good old fashioned tuck and draw or a good old fashioned tuck and lay can still be some of the most powerful cards in the game, and a great way to start off an engine. And so I like keep them as they are. They're great. They're classics. They still have their place in the game. Even some of the Predator powers that we might have said last week are becoming really weak now in comparison to some of the other bird powers in the game. But in the right context, if they're the birds that come up at the right time and happen to fit your bonus cards or happen to fit your game, sometimes you will play them, and that's okay. Not every bird in the game has to be the most powerful bird in the game, kind of objectively or taken in isolation. Sometimes it just takes the right combination. So I would say keep things as they are.
You'll keep them as they are, fan. Yeah, that's fine.
What I was going to say next is just I just wanted to send out our thanks to people who have got in touch about the Predator Power segment. It's obviously becoming a recurring feature of this pod, but I think it's quite cool. In particular, Joe, who's brilliant email going through a lot of the original game Predator powers and going through why they might reflect how these birds act in reality. Obviously, for us living in the UK or now in Australia, we're less familiar with all of these American birds. So it's actually really cool to go through how they how they act in reality. So in particular, you gave a really great explanation of the peregrine falcon and how it uses really high speeds, the fastest bird in the world, to kind of stun its prey and then eat its prey. It's really cool. And it actually, something else came up this week that here in Australia, which is exactly on theme, so very well timed by these birds. But I did see a wedge-tailed eagle hunting
God.
actively this week. Yeah, so
wow,
they're apparently pretty common down in Victoria. But we were just driving along the Great Ocean Road, and we saw out of the window right in front of the car a wedge-tailed eagle, which are enormous, actively hunting a pack of smaller ravens. And it's really interesting to see there was a strategy of the ravens who were trying to stay above the it was trying to fly to stay above the eagle in order to prevent it diving and catching them. At one point, the eagle did have one of them in its claws, but they managed to escape. It was fascinating to see. But what unbelievably beautiful birds! I think their wingspan's over 200 centimeters in the game, but you can believe it. They are enormous, absolutely enormous, and really interesting, very distinctive wedge tails. Obviously, as the name suggests, but they are very distinctive, very cool.
Speaking of successful tucking, that's a difficult segue. That is. Speaking of successful tucking,
maybe not your neatest segue in the world, but
did you see this week, Aidan? Probably a new record for a high score that I've ever seen, which is 464. Now, the caveat to this is that the person was playing all 5 players at once and doing one of those where they try and get as many points as possible. And so when they play the other players, they just play cards which are like Savvy's Warbler and gives everyone cards and gives everyone eggs and stuff. But this person has managed to double the highest score I've ever seen, 464, with a quite phenomenal chain. Did you see it this week, Aidan?
Yeah. So I've it's very impressive. I mean, 464 is not like, I can't even think of one that comes close to that I've seen.
Yeah, and so it's by it's another one on the subreddit. It's by striking _ beat 4479. You know what? Whenever I read these out, I'm really worried that it's going to be one of these like joke names that I then read out on air, and it says it's something rude. You know, like do you remember? In The Simpsons, when Bart would always call the bar and ask him to say, "Is so and so in the bar?" Anyway. In this 464, this person has got 151 tuck cards and 107 food on cards. And you would think that these high scores are basically just build the best wet chain that you can. But this person hasn't. They've actually built a tree chain. To my unbelievable delight, they have a tree chain. And so the chain, which looks like it's in German, is the first thing to go on, is the 2E. So that's effectively a bird that lives in the trees. Copy of brown power of one bird to the player to your left. Then it's the 2 repeater brown power birds in a row.
So the catbird and the northern mockingbird, and then
they
you've got
both
the
have
chiff
23 tuck cards and 16 wheats on them.
I know.
Then you've got the chiff-chaff, which is in German is called the Zilpzalp, which is a great
what a name! What an unbelievable
name! Much for the German name. And then the last one is the wheat version of the chiff-chaff, which is in English is the chaffinch, isn't it, Aidan?
So the last bird is the Eurasian nutcracker.
Oh, sorry. Which is
it's the Eurasian nutcracker, which is choose 1 to 5 birds in your forest and cache a wheat on each of them.
Are you sure it's not the chaffinch? Oh no, chaffinch is just tucking. Yeah, you are right. Who am I to question you, the expert on Wingspan? Yeah. And so they've managed to build this chain and along with it get 65 bonus card points. We'll put a link to it in the show. I had no idea that was possible. The times that I've done that, I've done it live. I haven't done it on the app. And I've played 3 people at once. This was during lockdown when I was quite lonely, and we had a round table at the time. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the pod before. We had a round table at the time, and it was on a wooden floor. And so I put the table stand on a towel, and then I rotated it like a lazy Susan for the different players. And then the best I managed was like 160. So 400.
I think that was without all of the expansions, wasn't it? So we
can
give you some allowances there. We can give you some allowances there.
You're too kind to me, Aidan. You're too kind to me. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's very impressive score to get. I think it's fair to say that chain, maybe not one to try and do if you don't have a load of other players giving you stuff, because it just doesn't work otherwise.
Yeah, that is true. But striking beat 4479. If you do listen to the show, how about you send us an email and say that this is your Wingspan Hall of Fame play, because we are still collecting.
Very good.
We are still collecting submissions. We have been really impressed with the submissions, actually. They've been so good so far. So we are fulltuckpodcast@gmail.com. And I just want to know, or we just want to know, what are the plays that are famous in your friend group or in your family? And if you want to hear who wins the Hall of Fame Wingspan play and wins some exclusive full tuck coasters, then you'll need to tune in next week, because we're going to read them all out and we are going to decide on the best one. And also tell us where you listen to us from. I will give you a little Hall of Fame submission from myself next week. How's that as a little teaser?
Okay. Yeah, there you go. I like that.
Yeah,
I
I made a pledge to myself today that I'm not going to mention the Americas expansion, so that's the only reason I'm not mentioning it now, because I'm just bleating on about Americas. So, with that, shall we move on to this opening hand then, Aidan? Because it's a real good one again, isn't it?
Yeah, let's do it. So, opening hand review time. So again, for those of you who are new, this is a recurring feature that we do most weeks on the podcast, where we get dealt an opening hand as if you would in the game, full with bonus cards, end of round goals, number of players and where you're going in the game, and a face-up tray of birds as well, so that you know what you're dealing with. And we go through what we might do, and then we get people to write in, which is all it's great. It's great to get your interactions from all of you guys. So this week's opening hand, we've got the European goldfinch, which lives in the forest or the grasslands, eats 2 wheats and a cherry, 6 bird points, bowl nest, 4 egg capacity, and a pink flocking power. Once between turns, when another player tucks a card for any reason, tuck a card from the deck behind this bird. The Carolina wren, which lives in the forest, eats a witchetty grub or a cherry, 1 bird point, cavity nest, 5 egg capacity, and a when played power, draw 2 cards. The wattled jacana, probably said that wrong, lives in the wetlands, eats a witchetty grub, wheat, and a fish, 7 bird points, star nest, 3 egg capacity, and a brown power. When activated, refill the bird tray. If you do, you may trade 1 card from your hand with a card in the tray. The forest owlet, which lives in the forest, eats a witchetty grub and a rat, 4 points, cavity nest, 2 egg capacity, and a predator. When activated power, choose any 2 dice, roll them up to 3 times. Each time, if you roll at least 1 witchetty grub or rat, cash 1 here. If not, stop and return all food cached here this turn. And finally, the violet green swallow, which can live anywhere, eats 2 witchetty grubs, 3 bird points, cavity nest, 3 egg capacity, and a flocking brown power. When activated, tuck a card from your hand behind this bird. If you do, draw 1 card.
And if you want to have a look at it, there is a link to the photo in the show notes. Your bonus cards are Viticulturalist, which is birds that eat cherries, and to score the higher one, that's 4 birds and gets you 7 points, and Wetland Ranger, which is consecutive birds in your wetlands with ascending or descending scores, and the highest is 5 whole birds, and that gets you 8 points.
And in the tray, we've got the Australasian pipit, which lives in the grasslands, eats a witchetty grub and a wheat, 3 bird points, pebble nest, 4 egg capacity, and a yellow game end flocking power. Tuck a card from the deck behind each bird in your grasslands, including this one. The verdita flycatcher, which lives in the forest, eats a witchetty grub and a cherry, 5 bird points, cavity nest, 2 egg capacity, brown when activated power. If you've gained a witchetty grub from the bird feeder on this turn, gain a cherry from the supply. And finally, another America's bird, the horned guan, which lives in the forest, eats a witchetty grub, a cherry, and an anything. 6 bird points, platform nest, 2 egg capacity, and a bonus card when played power for each bird on your player map with a platform nest. Draw 1 new bonus card, keep 1 and discard the rest.
Hell of a bird, that is. Hell of a bird. Your end of round goals. The Holy Grail, no goal in the first round. Second round is cherries and wheats in food cost of birds. Third round, total birds. Fourth round, platform birds with eggs on them. It is a 3-player game and you are going second. And Aidan, what are you going to do in this 3-player game?
Yeah, I mean, look, no goal game. That changes everything, doesn't it? That completely changes the swing of the game, and what you might do. I think the other thing to say is that you've got a bit of synergy that's starting to develop in that you've got. I mean, I think the most powerful birds here are the forest owlet, which is a on the topic of predator powers, is extremely powerful, high chance of working, and also potentially multiple points per activation. So I'm definitely keeping that one. I'm definitely also keeping the violet green swallow in order to develop my forest chain. And then finally, I'm going to keep the wattled jacana.
Violet green swallow going in the forest.
It certainly is, yeah. So,
are you doing your best Adam impression?
I know. So
wow.
I know. So I'm the reason for that is because of the wattled jacana.
Yeah.
You're able to give yourself enough card draw to make it work. I would love to keep the European goldfinch. But I think going back to the tips that we gave to beginners for the base game at the start of this episode, you can't keep every bird in your hand, and sometimes you've got to be smart about what you keep and don't keep. So I'm keeping the wattled jacana, the forest owlet, and the violet green swallow, which will give me a nectar and 2 other foods to start with. I'll use 2 of those foods to play the forest owlet, and then get myself enough food to play the wattled jacana. And then I will be looking for a way to get some eggs to play that violet green swallow also in the forest and start spinning that chain.
Yeah, that wattled jacana as a new America's bird is a really interesting power. When activated, refill the bird tray. If you do, you may trade 1 from your hand with 1 in the tray. I think is completely unique, but also it's 7 points and it's a star nest. So that's a bird that really we should be keeping. It's got a strong power. I just think 7 points and it's a star nest. It's a really good power, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think I would do exactly the same as you, Aidan, but I would try and probably combine the violet green swallow with the jacana some way. And so either have it to the left or the right. I don't actually think it matters that much because the jacana is so flexible. And I'd probably, because it's a no-goal game, go digging for a wetlands chain thereafter. So we're both doing the opposite things as usual.
That's really interesting.
I suppose if I'm doing that, it means I shouldn't really be keeping the forest owlet because I'd need a bird that's just going to get me food. The forest owlet I love. The first time I played it ended up with something like 24 food cached on it. It is so powerful. And I'm doing the same. I'm ignoring the goldfinch. And Aidan, it looks like it's you and me against the people.
Oh no, is it really?
Yeah. Because I'll tell you what the vast majority of people are doing. I think we've had 4 or 5 people do exactly the same thing. So they are keeping goldfinch, they're keeping the wren, and they're keeping the swallow. So the wren is a when played, draw 2 new cards, and then the swallow is obviously tuck 1 to draw 1. And then so this is if I just read out what Gabby's done. First go, I will play the California wren and use it to pick up the verditer flycatcher and the horned guan. So those are the 2 that are in the tray. The verditer flycatcher is if you've gained a witch-teeth grub from the bird feeder on this turn, gain 1 cherry from the supply. And the guan is this new power, which is for each bird on your player map with a platform nest, draw 1 new bonus card. And then gain the food to play the violet green swallow, then the European goldfinch. And that is what loads of people are doing. And as Paul summarised the horned guan, he said, you just know it takes guan to know guan.
Nice.
Oh dear.
Nice.
Love that. Bit of a dad joke in there, isn't it? Yeah. Which is completely the opposite of what we're doing. What would you is a tactic? It really works quite well, I think, what they're all doing, because then you've got your 4 birds to qualify for viticulturalist already.
Yeah.
But my worry with keeping the goldfinch in a 3-player game is I don't think it's going to get you that many points.
I think it's a roll of the dice, isn't it? I think in a 2-player game, I think you definitely don't. In a 3-player game, I'm definitely tempted by it, but I think it's quite an expensive bird to play if you're then not going to get much benefit from it. I mean, you might get lots of benefit from it, but also, I mean, certainly I know if I'm playing a lower number player game, so a 2 or 3-player game, and I see another player play the goldfinch or the snow bunting, I might actually migrate away from a tucking game if I have the option to do that in order to make that a wasted play.
I was going to say just that. You either, you have to go one of 2 different ways. You either need to lean so heavily into it that the benefit you get from it outweighs the benefit that they get, i.e., have a chain which tucks you 3 or 4 birds per activation, so that your benefit outweighs their just single, or you lean away from it. And so if I see someone initially take the goldfinch, I would try and lean away. So I'd completely agree with you there. So what are other people doing? Joe is keeping the goldfinch, the wren, and the swallow, so like all of our other people, but is also keeping the owlet. And most people seem to be going to pick up the guan and the flycatcher. You're not picking up the guan, Aidan?
I would love to be able to pick up the guan. because it's brilliant. So, again, I played a game with my partner early last night, and she had, I can't remember the name of the bird, but she had essentially the equivalent power, but with cavity nests, and used it, I think, in round 2 to draw one of 4 bonus cards.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
So, you can get like a really great, powerful bonus card early in the game, and also, like, it's already a 6-point bird, so it's one of the kind of higher point bonus card birds anyway. And obviously, it fits the viticulturalist. So no, I would love to play it.
Yeah,
and I think if it was still there early, then I would.
I've actually got a reasonably hot take about these type of birds that I'm going to say for our America's discussion in a few weeks, because I think this is the only thing. Because I think the star nests are now. So then there used to be like A-tier birds. Now most of the time they're C-tier birds, and this new power is the only thing that saves it for me. So I'll save that for another week.
Wow, interesting,
dear listener, because that's a hot take. But yeah, thanks for emailing in everyone and writing in. Just remember, this is your last week to submit your Hall of Fame plays before you can win a lovely, lovely coaster. And I don't think we'll have time to do an opening hand next week, so we'll save it for the following week. And next week can just be purely us discussing your best ever plays. How does that sound?
So we'll have. Please write in your Hall of Fames for next week. Like Adam says, last chance to do that. We really enjoyed reading through them, and we're going to really enjoy going through them, I think, next week as well. So definitely keep sending those in, and then we'll release an opening hand for the week after. So then keep your eyes peeled for that to let us know what you would do, so we can give you a shout out on air and clearly show how our views contradict everyone else's views. But we could do that live.
A shout out on the world's premiere Wingspan podcast. That really is something.
Does not get better than that. Not get better than that.
Oh, God.
So yeah, please do write in. Been lovely as always, Adam. Lovely to hear from all of you guys at home. Please keep letting us know. We'll see you very, very soon.
Signing off. See you next week for some best plays ever. Bye-bye.
Bye.